Welcome! Thanks for watching our video on reporting alleged violations based on publicly available documentation, which, as you can imagine, explores reporting alleged ethics violations against BACB certificants or applicants based on publicly available information. We appreciate your interest in helping us protect consumers of behavior analytics services, certificants, and the ABA profession by learning more about our reporting options. In this video, we'll break down the publicly documented alleged violation submission option, provide helpful tips and resources, and walk you through the publicly documented alleged violation form step by step. Let's get started. The role of the Ethics Department. The primary focus of the BACB's Ethics Department is to protect consumers of behavior analytics services, supervisees, trainees, certificants, and applicants by enforcing the ethics standards represented in the Ethics Code for Behavior Analysts and the RBT Ethics Code 2.0. These codes outline the BACB's professional and ethics requirements and serve as the foundation of its protections. One way the BACB helps protect consumers and others is by processing complaints made against BACB certificants and applicants. Complaints can be submitted in many different ways, but we're going to focus on the publicly documented alleged violation option. So, what is the publicly documented alleged violation option? This option is a type of complaint that can be filed against a BACB certificant or applicant. It's unique because it allows individuals to submit complaints anonymously. But there's a catch. This option can only be used if the supporting documentation for the complaint is publicly available. But what counts as publicly available documentation? Publicly available documentation is anything that constitutes clear evidence of an ethics violation and can be found by anyone without creating an account, logging in, sharing personal information, paying a fee, or being a member of a group. For example, published court documents, government releases, news articles, and information on public websites or social media pages are considered publicly available documentation. On the other hand, client reports, treatment plans, email correspondences, information gathered from private or closed social media groups, or screenshots of text messages are not. So, if your documentation meets the definition of publicly available, the publicly documented alleged violation option may be right for you. Important terms. Before we go any further, we should cover a few important terms that we'll reference throughout the video. The notifier is the individual who submits a notice of alleged violation out of concern that an ethics violation has occurred. This person could be a certificant, caregiver, or anyone with knowledge about the possible misconduct. The subject is the individual against whom a notice of alleged violation is submitted. This person could be an RBT, BCABA, or BCBA applicant or certificant. The Code Enforcement Procedures document describes the conditions under which the BACB may take action against an individual's eligibility or certification. This document also outlines the BACB's general systems for processing notices and the components of due process afforded to applicants and certificants who have allegedly violated one or more ethics requirements. Considerations for submitting a publicly documented alleged violation form. Now that we're more familiar with this option and these terms, we'll help you prepare to submit a publicly documented alleged violation form. First things first, you should review the considerations for reporting an alleged violation against a BCABA or BCBA and the considerations for reporting an alleged violation against an RBT documents. These documents should be your go-to resources, as they'll help you determine whether you should submit a notice. They can be found on the BACB's Reporting to the Ethics Department webpage. Here are a few additional considerations that might help you make a decision. Is the alleged misconduct causing or posing harm to an individual? If so, report to the entity that can provide the fastest support, such as the police, or another entity charged with protecting individuals, like Child Protective Services. Can the alleged violation be resolved by having a conversation with the individual? Some difficult situations can be resolved without the submission of a notice. If you believe that this is the case, we recommend that you approach these conversations from a place of compassionate curiosity to share your concerns and gather more information. These conversations can be uncomfortable, but it's possible that the individual can provide an explanation that clarifies the situation. It's also possible that the individual is unaware of the issue you've identified and would appreciate the opportunity to address and correct it. However, sometimes a conversation will not resolve the issue, or it's just not feasible to address the situation directly. In those cases, submitting a notice is the correct route to take. For guidance on when and how to have these conversations, listen to our podcast episode, Addressing Potential Ethics Violations with Others. Find this episode on our Inside the BACB podcast webpage. Are you comfortable giving up the ability to be informed of and ask questions about the notice? As we mentioned earlier, the publicly documented alleged violation option is anonymous. This means that the BACB has no way of knowing the notifier's identity, sharing that information with the subject, or keeping the notifier informed of the outcome of the complaint. Before submitting this form, make sure you're okay with the fact that you won't be able to follow up on this notice. How to submit a publicly documented alleged violation form. Once you've reviewed all of these considerations and have decided to submit a publicly documented alleged violation against a BACB certificant or applicant, it's time to gather your materials and fill out the form. We'll walk you through it. This is the form you'll use. You can find it on the BACB's Reporting Alleged Violations based on publicly available documentation webpage. It's important to remember that you cannot save and return to this form, so you might want to review it as you prepare so that you have all of the necessary information ready to go in one sitting. Before you begin, you must gather your supporting documentation. And remember that under this option, all of your documentation must be publicly available. Here are some tips for gathering successful documentation. If you're submitting multiple documents, please save them in one PDF no larger than 10 megabytes. You must include URLs that direct to the documentation you're sharing. It's a good idea to have those web pages open as you complete the form. If your documentation includes information published on a website, we encourage you to take screenshots of the relevant information with the URL visible. This ensures that your documentation is recorded in the event that the website's information is altered or removed. Now that everything's in order, let's fill out the form. First, you'll be asked to provide the subject's first and last name and their certification number. If you believe that the subject is a BACB certificant, you can confirm it by looking them up in the BACB certificant registry, which is linked in the form for your convenience. If they are, write down their certification number, as you'll be asked to provide it later. Back on the publicly documented alleged violation form, if the subject is a certificant, enter their certification number in the text field. If the subject is an applicant, write applicant in the text field. At this point, you'll be asked to describe the alleged violation. This should be a brief and clear description of the concern. Next, you can enter the specific ethics standards that you believe the subject has violated. This step is optional. Since the notifier is anonymous, the BACB can't reach out for additional information, so this is your chance to provide the specific ethics standards that you believe were violated for the BACB's consideration. If you choose to identify specific ethics standards, please review the RBT Ethics Code 2.0 if you're reporting against an RBT certificant or applicant, or review the Ethics Code for Behavior Analysts if you're reporting against a BCABA or BCBA certificant or applicant. Please do not submit a long list of standards. Instead, pinpoint 1 to 3 specific standards that are clearly supported by the documentation you're submitting. Next, you'll be asked whether you've reported the alleged violation to another entity. Here, you'll paste the link that directs to the publicly available documentation. If you would like to share multiple websites or web pages, please paste the additional ones in the text field above your description of the alleged violation. You're almost done. Next, you'll be prompted to upload any supporting documentation. You can do this by clicking the Choose File button. You made it to the end. All you have to do now is click Submit. If, in the future, you acquire additional information that's relevant to a publicly documented alleged violation you previously submitted, you'll have to submit a new form. In this case, please use the description of the alleged violation text field to indicate that the information you're providing is related to a previous submission. You should also provide the date of the original submission, or your best guess. Before we say goodbye, here are a few additional tips and reminders to consider. If you are an RBT or BCABA and a notice has been filed against you, tell your supervisor immediately and ask for support in preparing your response. This is vital, as you will be asked to verify that you have shared and reviewed the notice with your supervisor on record. The BACB will also send the notice and all other official documentation to your supervisor to ensure that they are fully informed and can support you to the best of their ability. Keep the personal information in your BACB account up to date. If a notice is submitted against you, Ethics Department staff refer to your BACB account to find your supervisor on record, so we encourage you to regularly check that their name and contact information are accurate. Otherwise, they won't receive all of the information they need to help you. Respond to all BACB communications by the indicated due dates. When individuals fail to respond to communications or requirements from the BACB can take action, including suspending or revoking an individual's eligibility or certification. So, if you're an applicant or certificant, it's crucial that you stay on top of all necessary BACB communications, and that BACB emails aren't filtering into your spam folder. Conclusion. This brings us to the end of our video. We know that this is a lot of information to consider, so here's a quick recap of the steps you should take to submit a publicly documented alleged violation. First, make sure your supporting documentation meets the definition of publicly available. Then, review the relevant considerations for reporting an alleged violation document to determine whether you should move forward with your submission. And remember that it's rarely a bad idea to have a conversation with the individual to see if the issue can be addressed without a notice. If you decide to submit, gather and organize your supporting documentation. Finally, complete the publicly documented alleged violation form and submit it with the supporting documentation you collected. Thanks for watching and for your continued support in protecting consumers of behavior analytics services, certificates, and the ABA profession.